नमस्कार।
Hi.
बिहू चाय चखा त्रियश चाय मेछे पंडित जी मेछे अंग्रेज चाय।
Can we start with your story? What happened?
I was born in downtown Srinagar. It's called Ali Kadal. To be more precise, it's called 10 Kutubuddinpura Ali Kadal Srinagar. And Ali Kadal is one of the bridges on river Vitasta, which is also called Jhelum. It's the fourth or fifth bridge. See how much we lose when we don't stay in a place. And from there on, because we lived in a very big house, but then it had a lot of people living inside it, and my father's cousins. It was like, I don't know if you have read Orhan Pamuk's Istanbul. It describes that house exactly as it would have been. There were some 50-60 people living in a house, in one house, cousins running up and then we sold that house in 1979, and everybody got smaller houses from themselves outside just on the outskirts of the city, except for my father, who wanted to live in a village. And we moved to a village called Bagati Kannipura. It was in a different district, but only 13 kilometers from Srinagar, central Srinagar, and we lived there. And in Kashmir there is this strange obsession among Kashmiris, both Muslims as well as Pandits, about houses. Whatever little money you have, you put into your houses. Everything that my father had, possibly, he put into this house, and it was like a house by a brook. You could actually sit in the veranda and put your feet in the brook.
I belong to Srinagar city. My house was probably 1.5 kilometers from Dal Lake. I lived in a place called Rainawari. Rainawari had a mixed kind of a population. There were quite a number of people belonging to our community in that place, and I was born there. So was my father and my grandfather. In Srinagar, I studied in the oldest school. This school is known by the name Tandil Biscuit School. It was founded in Kashmir in 1880. That's where our Dr. Farooq Ubla and some other prominent people studied. My grandfather studied in the same school. His name was Mr. S. Durrani. My father, my uncles, they studied in the same school. My father's name was Mr. M. K. Durrani. I studied in the same school right from nursery till my 10th. This school was approximately 4.5 kilometers from my place. So I lived in Rainawari. I had a very good view from my home. मेरे पढ़ाई करने का जो floor था, that was the topmost floor. So I opened my windows on the right hand side, so I could view Shankaracharya. Front, if I open it, it stayed Zabarwan. Zabarwan is where Pari Mahal and all that, they are at the base of Zabarwan. And if I open it on the left hand side, I could see Hari Parbat. We had two houses and a common compound. Both were around 4 floors tall. एक तो खाली था, it was पुराना था, और दूसरे में हम रहते थे.
The place where I was born is in South Kashmir. District is Anantnag, and I was born in a village that's called Hangalgund. Hangalgund is in Kokarnag area. It is a tourist destination place. I don't know anything about Kashmir. All the things I remember is out of my mother's memory. Whatever she has told me, I know that thing only.
Tell us when you were in class 8, what was going through your mind?
Actually, when I was in class 8, we used to enjoy. Why we used to enjoy? Because whenever we used to go to school, just an hour in a school, and it used to say, oh, kahin pe bomb fat gaya, to chalo, let's do chutti. So it was a different kind. We were not knowing what militancy is, what is happening. We used to enjoy this part because school was bunk. It was just for 4-5 days there was chutti, and then one day we go to school, and next day the school was still closed. So that was a different kind of a thing. There was nothing in our minds, no fear. But slowly it started building. It took at least 2 years to build up that that terror inside the normal human being.
What was shocking was the sudden change of the mindset, the sudden change in the people's thinking, their perspectives, a sudden change in the relationships between your friends, between your neighbors, between your colleagues, who till then were part of your existence, part of your growth, who till then where though separated from you by faith, by religion, by most probably religious practices, but still an important part of your existence over there. And suddenly you found out the strains in the relationship.
I remember we had a couple of Bihari friends. We are here, we may never come back again, because those days, transport and everything we were still a primitive country, so to say. And we fixed their tickets, everything was done. I still remember that my father told me, we have brought new curtains from the house because your friends would be coming, and we have decked up all the rooms. And then suddenly a spate of killings happened. And we had a friend called Ashish Bhan who stayed in downtown Srinagar. His father came and he said, I don't think it's a good idea for them to come. And after discussing it with them, we decided that for us, we were locals, it's okay for us because we are going home. For them, it's not the same. So the trip was cancelled. And these were ominous signs when the trip was cancelled. And I came home around 16th of October 1989. And the village was tense. It wasn't simmering yet, but it was tense.
My dad was employed as part of the public health services in Kashmir, and eventually he was told that being a Hindu he will have to leave because he's a senior Hindu officer and it's not safe for him to be there. So he operated out of Jammu for a while. My mother came a year after I did. Trouble had begun and it was not safe, and my father was like, you better go because we can't subject everybody to the uncertainty here. So she came about a couple of years after I left, and again she thought that things will improve and she'll be able to go back. So it was like we took a bag full of summer clothes. We could never go back to retrieve our winter clothes.
Well, we left in 1990. My father left in July 90 because he felt that, like any other Kashmiri Pandit, that things might improve, I think dangerous optimism or whatever you might like to term it as. But me and my sister, we left on after the 19th January night when everybody came out on streets shouting these slogans, and we were in a relatively safe area, but the mics that they had in the mosques where they were making these announcements, it was quite scary. It was really scary, and there were only three of us in the house, three women, my mother and my sister and myself and one servant. So we were all huddled in a room, and we were wondering what next. Are they going to kill us? Maybe it was out of fear. They were not actually going to come and attack us, but that whole fear psychosis drove most of the people out that night. But they also thought, okay, let's send our daughters and our children away for a while. Maybe this will subside, and then maybe after a few months we'll come back. But that never happened.
It so happened that one fine night at 10 o'clock, there was such a situation created that we have to call a taxi, and 4 of us were in a taxi, and whatever important things we could carry, we just carried there. And in the morning we landed up in Jammu.
My father was posted in Ladakh, Leh, and at my home I only had mother and sister. So all of a sudden, 19 January, we were watching TV at my place, and there was this TV program happening about, I think, Romania or something.
Yeah, Ceausescu had just been dragged out of his house and killed and shot.
It was because you could hear the rallies and all that. And Kashmir में हमारे घर में कमरे भी थोड़े बड़े होते थे as compared, and we had volume भी थोड़ा ऊंचा ही रखते थे. तो suddenly we heard more and more voices, and हमने कहा ये क्या है, शायद टीवी का वॉल्यूम ज़्यादा है. तो I went forward and reduced the volume, and I could hear the loudspeakers of all the mosques, and it was very, very scary. I got very scared. 15-20 minutes, half an hour, I was like this, and then I could hear people walking through the streets and all that. So I took my mother and sister to my neighbor's house.
When we came out from Kashmir, there was nothing called camps and all. So we stayed with few of our relatives who were in Jammu. But how long? We thought, abhi 10-15 days, things will be better, we'll go back. or maybe month's time, and things will be better and we'll go back.
So I'm reading this portion. This is right after our exodus. It's a small portion. This is the time when no one knew what was happened to other Kashmiri Pandits, because there was no way you could communicate with them. So it was later at this place called Gita Bhavan, which is a small dharamshala cum temple in the heart of Jammu city, where all of us would assemble in the evenings and take stock of who had escaped, who was killed, what had happened to others, etc. So I'm going to read a small portion from there. In the evenings, we would go to the Gita Bhavan temple in the heart of old Jammu. It was there that the enormity of our tragedy, of our exile in our own country, struck us. The Bhavan had a large central courtyard. Portions of the building had been taken over by families who had nowhere else to go. Rags or saris or blankets or even bed sheets had been hung up to create small private spaces. We would all flock to the Bhavan to find out about the welfare of other families. Neighbors met neighbors, brothers met brothers, colleagues met colleagues, and in that courtyard they took stock of the catastrophe that had befallen them. Trat Hasape was the common refrain those days. Lightning had struck us. Some smoked cigarette after cigarette. Women walked to the storage tank to collect water. Everything looked like a nightmare, including the unreliable water supply. Old women wearing their traditional ferens in that heat cooled themselves with bamboo hand fans. It was at the Bhavan that the fate of others became evident to us. Stories of what had happened in Anantnag, in Sopore, in Baramulla, in Badgam, in Kupwara.
I went to Kashmir for the first time in 8th standard with my mother and my father. We were staying in Srinagar initially, and then while we were returning back, we decided we'll go via Anantnag. And my maternal grandfather, my Nanaji, he had a huge business there. He had oil mills there. We stopped our car in the middle of city and we decided we'll go and walk. I remember exactly, my father was walking ahead, and then was my mother, and then I was there. I didn't know anything about it. So they were walking, I was walking behind them. We were walking through a lane. All of a sudden I could see a huge area, a huge building with bricks, with closed doors. My mother was looking at it. My mother was actually touching those walls. And when she came back, for half an hour she couldn't speak anything. And then for 2 hours she kept crying and crying and crying.
If I have undergone a pain, I don't want to give that pain to my next generation. I will never tell them that what has actually happened with us. I at the max tell my kids that we've left Kashmir due to some problem and now we are settled here. I don't pass on that pain, and that will not be right also, because whatever I have undergone, I'll not be able to give them. I have given them good memories about Kashmir, and I always tell them that I'll show you where my school was, where I used to live, where we used to play. So they have been raised in such a way that they know that we are Kashmiri, and we'll go back to Kashmir and see snow and see other things. I don't want to pass on this pain to them. It's over with us.
I consciously did not. I mean, he obviously understood that he's a Kashmiri in terms of, connecting to an identity. But I didn't talk about the exodus or what we went through. I think, and again, it's a very personal and individual decision. The reason being that I wanted him to find out on his own and hear all versions. I'm not the distorted versions, and maybe at that stage, if he wants to, he can come back to me and probably verify. But then I didn't want him to go with that mindset. I haven't fed that stories to my son. He comes with me every year, and whatever he saw there. I mean, if he had any questions, then I would answer those queries. But I didn't sort of put it in his mind that this is how it was. No, I don't do that. I consciously avoided that.
So, what was your first reaction when you went to Kashmir for the first time?
More like a tourist.
I keep my son informed. Like, he's studying in, abhi just first को 5th में आ गया. So I have given him this Rahul Pandit's book. So he's reading it. उसने करीब 50-60 पेज पढ़ लिया.
Taking my daughter this month to Kashmir to get her to see who we are. So किस में जमा चेक पर है? Third ऐसा क्या चीज़ स्कूल है ना?
मानव रचना.
चशी कशीर का सुन. कोत शी का सुनता है.
सरका भगवती.
हाँ.
रेगनिया भगवती.
बेच का सुन चक्रस.
बाकी का नाम नहीं पता.
नाम नहीं पता है.
जहाँ जाना है.
जहाँ जाना है. अच्छा.
Outside Kashmir, the biggest hurdle for us is to sustain that Kashmiri culture. 2007, me and my father saw this ad in a newspaper that invited NGOs, educational institute to apply for community radios, and we applied for it. I was in conversion journalism. There's a Jamia community radio, so I knew I would be trained in this medium. The people who founded community radio in India, those were the people who used to train us and teach us in Jamia. We had to give the presentation in the ministry. I gave presentation in front of 20 people. There were people from United Nations, from various ministries. We submitted our agenda in front of them. And for JNK, it's a tough task. You need to get approval from each and every ministry, from INB, from intelligence, from JNK. It took us somewhere around 3 to 4 years. Then they give you letter of intent and then all the formalities that they do. From where do you get the towers? How do you set up the radio studio? We formalize things and then people give a license. Most important, what should be the programming code for it? How the mood of radio should be? Whom should we actually target? Who should our listeners be? We did testing, all the singers got involved, all the radio presenters got involved, and right now the radio Sharda, we have more than 2 lakh listeners in Jammu only, and if you go across the globe, we have more than 4 lakh listeners.
The calling of our roots is always there. That longing for our own land is always there. I have seen people, the old people, becoming melancholic. With so many people in my own family, my own grandmother, before her death, she said, won't you cremate me at that place where my husband was cremated besides his? So you will cremate me somewhere over here. No, this is something which there's a gentleman around 74, 75 who signs off his emails with the signature, deprived of my cremation ground. So once I called him, I said, look, what is it? He said, yeah, at least if not the choice to live at my own place, this government should at least give me the right to be cremated at my own crematorium.
It will be about my own village, which I yearn to be buried back in, not even burned but buried back in, because we are burnt, we are not buried. So let me just recollect. Mehein re, mekari kya re, chudaznas kyut menovan ke, chigazmuz hal shejaras, vatan trovum lagus naras. Marit aram țaran chus, panun sui gam țaran chus, yeten baratal kola asum, yeten yastai shafa osum, yeten baji buda osum, rusuldaras mazaras posh, agar ven gast dalnam hosh. Marit kanpur nizev me, vicheviyet kun dodar bunya, metet tal karizev shinya, inha ush furti akhtraviu, yeli mitstal me dobraviu. Yezaniu poz buvotus gar, ichi kanpur buno yetmar. Want me to translate? Well, this is because we have lived in summers here and this is unusual for us, this heat. So when I will be dead and you will try to burn me, there will be nothing left to burn because we will already be dead of this heat. And now that in my life I could not find any aram, I could not find any sukoon, I could not find any peace. I want to be taken back to where I belong, and where I had a stream running right next to my house where I could put my feet in the stream, where I had friends who were young, and where we had a very old man, his name was Burji. He also died in exile. And then we had this Rasuldar who was the head of the village, whose graveyard would be covered by flowers. And when you take me back, you will find that there are 3 chinars in a row there. and in one of the chinars it's hollow from inside. Just dig that chinar and bury me in there. And when you bury me, please don't shed tears, because I will be finally coming home. It will be like union of my union with my soil, with my motherland.